also was like assuming that I would just get X since I've gotten X every time.
I mean, I kind of was in the opinion that you would get square because you're blue, and Cody would get moon because he normally gets moon, but he called square, so threw me off.
It was the first one that I targeted on the first time.
Wow, this lazy motherfucker. Yo, so this is a Darkheart Thicket 24 on Tyrannical, Volcanic, Sanguine week. So to start things off, we're going to start by lusting the first pool here. We're going to group up the first 2.5 packs here. And basically, as we're doing this, we just want to kick these screechers, the birds, while trying to kill down the cats here. They leap and put a basically a bleed on people that doesn't get removed unless they get topped off. It's either topped off or above 90%, one of the two. But just going to take care of these real quick, and as soon as they're done, we're going to immediately pull this giant bear. You can pull the bear with the other packs. Normally I would for Tyrannical weeks, but with it being Sanguine week, I didn't want Sanguine to just heal the bear back. So as things are coming out, the first roar that AoEs you can survive without anything at all. As these little ads come out, I try to knock them back. Sometimes I'll also parry one of them if they're in a good spot, just to make sure that they stay away. And then if there's a second roar, that's where you can start using a defensive, and if there's a third one, you definitely want to use a bigger defensive. Now in this next pack that we've got, normally I would combine these two, but the mobs are kind of random. So where we've got these runers, they do 2 casts. They do Despair, and then they also do like a Star Shower. The Star Shower absolutely needs kicked. Despair, not so much. But the thing about this is that these mobs can either be these guys right here that cast, or they can be people that turn into spiders and then poison. So it's random every time you come in here, and unfortunately we got 2 casters and then another caster up here that you can see with these 2 birds. The birds are always the same, but it's the 3 casters that sometimes you get a poisoner. If there was a poisoner, I would have brought it here, but the fact that we had another caster, I separated the pools. If you have all poisoners, you can pull it together. If you got 1 caster, 2 poisoners, you can pull it together. Basically, anything but 3 casters, unless you've got kicks for the 3 casters, then it's not too bad, but grouping them is kind of unfortunate. So these birds, you want to be careful because they do charge, they do propelling charge, and sometimes after it hits, like you can just sidestep it, but sometimes after it stops its animation, it will still do the damage if you walk into its hitbox. So just be careful. That we had a different run where our warrior just like walked into attack, even though he had finished his charge and still died out of nowhere. So just be careful of that. And also with it being Sanguine week, you gotta be careful of that. Now the next pack, over here we've got some more of the randomness where it could be casters or it could be the poisoners, but then these cats here are always the same. So get kicks on your ruiners if they're there. Make sure to dispel poison whenever you can with detox, and also just make sure that we're killing these cats because again they do apply that nasty bleed. I do generally like to pull these pats together, but again, I didn't this time just because of Sanguine and just we only had my 1 poison to spell at the time. I don't think our shaman actually took poison cleanse totem. So after that, you can skip the pack that's on the left here, and we're gonna keep going down, and there's gonna be 2 more mobs that are padding up here. Again, unfortunately, we get 2 casters, which kind of sucks. And I normally take this double pull here, and I pull it down. There's a pack on the left. Unfortunately, I die for some reason here. I don't really know what was going on with our healer. It was a bug, so never really died there before in my life, but hey, it happened here, so you could see it. But anyways, so normally you would just take these 2 casters, kick the Star Showers, and just kind of use kicks to get the Despair cast and pull them over to the other 2 pack. But unfortunately, because of weird things, we kept it separated here. So going back along the path, you'll see again as we go forward, there are the 2 other mobs here. This Screecher is always a Screecher, and then this other person can either be a Ruiner, or it can be one of those guys that's a Poison Spider dude. So again, we just got super unlucky with the amount of casters that we got here, that we just didn't get to pull these together. Again, the Screech you can just kick or use any kind of stun on, doesn't matter. For the Despair casts, you can kick those. If you use a CC, it will recast, but Star Shower will not. We are going to skip these bears. I use Invisbelt. I'm an engineer. It's pretty nice to be an engineer if you are a Brewmaster Monk, because you can get B-Res bracers, and then you can get this Invis Belt from Shadowlands. If you don't have that, you can pull the bears and you can just do like a death skip. But we used Invis Belt there. So with this boss, there's two things to watch out for. You've got this Primal Rampage, which is going to knock you back. You should always defensive this. Try to use Cell Brew. Cell Brew is up for every single one of these. And then he does a frontal with this. But if you take Roll, or if you take Chi Torpedo, doesn't matter which one, right when the cast is about to finish, if you roll to the side, you can just avoid the secondary damage. If you're uncomfortable with this, or if you've got melee that are kind of like spread all over the place that might be in the path, then it's not advised to do this. So make sure you're communicating with people. If not, then you can just use Dampen Harm, Fort Brew, Zen Med, any of those abilities to deal with the secondary attack here that I'm avoiding with the Chi Torpedo. And then the other thing to deal with is these ads that spawn. Generally, you want to keep them kind of close to the boss and just stun them and have them get nuked down real quickly and then pull slightly away so that there's not the blood underneath the boss, as it does damage things. It's not actually Sanguine. It just damages. It doesn't heal or anything like that. And you can just see I'm going to slowly just kind of kite around the outside of this circle, always making sure that there's no melee in between me and him. And if I do get myself in a spot like I was just there where I couldn't move, you can see that I used Dampen Harm there so that I would not take a huge chunk of damage from the actual, like him frontaling through me. Other than that, you do want to make sure that range stay out of the pack, because the leap that he does there, the jump out will cleave, the jump in doesn't seem to cleave, so it's safe to be like the melee on top of you, but for the ranged, you don't want them to be stacked. And if they're in, then it will hit everyone, and that's not good. With these mobs, you can also choose to CC them if you have something like a Resto Druid with Mass Roots, or you can knock them away and then CC them out there with Paralyze and like Hunter Trap, but it is pretty easy just to kill them as well. As you can see, we choose to kill every single pack that we're doing here. Again, I'm dodging these when I can. Unfortunately, there I got hit. I got clipped on a root, but it happens. Just to heal it back. Generally, at a 24 as a Brewmaster with Stagger, you can survive a hit without a defensive. I don't advise it, but it is possible. Just know that your Stagger is going to go super high and be ready to heal it. Ideally, if you're not going to be able to get out, just use a defensive. And then generally, if we are killing the ads every time, once it gets below 10%, that's when we will just choose just to knock them away and CC them. Use things like Ring of Peace to knock them away, because they don't matter that much. So you can see I did that right here, and then we finish the boss. So in the next pack, we've got the Dryad, which kind of moves and then stands still until 50%, and then at 50% she'll run away. But she also just like does poison darts at people, so you should make sure to spell them. And then also we have these two flowers. They just do the upburst, which is like this ground effect right there that you're seeing. Just move out of them. You can also stun them or paralyze them, and then or knock them with ring, and they won't do anything. Not too much to worry about. Now, I'm going to opt to skip the next pack. I don't normally recommend skipping the next pack, because if you die, the res point is at that first boss where you killed him for the entire dungeon. And if the rest of your group can't get past him, then it can cause issues. But here we choose to skip this. To skip this, all you need to do is grab the Dryad and just paralyze him. That'll stop her from moving, and then you can just walk on this right side. If you do choose to kill that, you just want to kill the Keeper first, making sure to dispel the poison from the Ruiner, dodging the mushroom wake knockups that come out. So the mushrooms that spawn, they will like one-shot if you run through them, unless you have a defensive as a tank. Or you could also use things like Turtle and Netherwalk and Bubble and stuff like that to just run through them and explode them so that they're no longer there. But we're skipping them, so we're just going to deal with this Dryad real quick, and then we're going to pull into the next pack. So the next pack has these two keepers. Again, you do want to kill them quickly. These will heal all of the mobs around them. So that's why it's ideal to kill them. And by the mobs around them, I just mean the flowers. It doesn't actually heal the Dryads. But the Dryads are kind of annoying. If the other Dryad pack that's slightly down the path is near, you can pull that with these. He wasn't near, so I just pull these and take care of them. You can see we're just kiting slowly around the circles to avoid the Sanguine, making sure to kill the keepers, And once the keeper is dead, I am going to take the rest of these flower blossoms and just pull them into the next keeper pack, or sorry, the next dryad pack down the hall. So the keeper did die, waiting for mushrooms to move, and maybe actually in this run I didn't do that. No, okay, mushrooms are gone now. So here, just make sure you communicate. Let people know that you are moving. The flowers can just keep on being killed as people chase you. You won't really take any damage as a tank here, as long as you guys sell brew and make sure you're expelling harm and whatnot. But come out here and just take care of this. I pull up my map real quick because with me skipping that pool over there, it's marked in pool 7 down on my map there. I just wanted to make sure I had enough percent, and I do. So as long as if you skip that, as long as you pull all of the blood little blobbies before the 3rd boss, you're fine. So I was just confirming real quick to make sure my math was correct. So again, there you can see the dryad here moved out at 50%. Now, as soon as it starts moving at 50%, you can either stun it or paralyze it or use anything like that, and it'll stop moving again. But it's not like the berserkers in like Everbloom, where if you stun it before it hits 50, she'll still run after the stun's over. So you have to actually stun her moving or paralyze her moving. Now these next mobs, there are 5 of them, obviously. These ones just do like the spam channel, and if the channel finishes, they will fear you. So it's highly recommended that you go into this pool with a plan. Because we only have the 4 of us in voice, we plugged our Holy Paladin for this key. We were kind of just trying to pull 4, and unfortunately I didn't get far enough away, so our 5th one comes in. It ends up being okay because our shaman did take the Tremor Totem, but these can easily lead to a wipe if you are dealing with like Raging Week, or if you're just not prepared for to get everything. So kicks, paralyze, Ring of Peace, leg sweep, any of those things will all take care and stop the cast here. Again, the cast just it does do some damage, and it can hurt if you get like 3 choosing the same person at the same time. But if it's just on one, it's generally fine, and the only time they get feared is if the channel finishes. So when we get to Oakheart here, this is the 2nd boss, and this is where we're going to use our lust. So generally I like to stack with the rest of the group at the very beginning, just for the knock, just for, you know, AoE heals and whatnot, and to place the ads that spawn here together. If you do group them together, you can have a person like you can run into it and then Tiger's Lust out, and it will normally clear them. You can see I just cleared 3 there, and you can do that also with like things like disengage or anything that like works like that, like freedom and stuff too. Just know that you have to be in it and then Tiger's Lust out. You can't pop Tiger's Lust and then run through it. You will get stunned. So things to watch out for on this boss. So for the breath, you have the ability that you can roll or chi torpedo out of the breath. However, it's like 50-50 on whether or not you'll take the breath or whether you avoid it. Every time I've tried it, it hasn't worked for me. So I've seen other people do it, but every time I've tried it, I still get hit. So generally what I do is for the breaths, I try to use my Cell Brew. Unfortunately, I didn't time it up correctly here, which kind of is unfortunate. But generally for breaths, I try to use my Cell Brew. And then for each of these other grips, I'm going to rotate using Dampen Harm. Then I'm going to use for the next one Fort Brew. Then for the next one, I'm going to try to use Dampen Harm again. One thing I learned here, you'll see here in a little bit, is that Zen Med does get canceled if you try to use it in the middle of this, because he like moves you around. It must count you as moving, or something like that, and it causes Zen Med to not work. So you could also use, if you have the trinket off of the final boss in the raid, the Rage Heart tank trinket. You can use that on one of these, but I do recommend that every time you're in there, when you're using a defensive, also make sure you're expelling harm on yourself, and if you have other heals, you can always vivify yourself or use the T like I am using here to help yourself as well. And then lastly, if you run out of defensives for that, just make sure that you let your healer know, like communicate with that with them. Unfortunately here I run into an issue where I'm out of defensives, and I just took the breath without Cell Brew, and I stupidly Cell Brewed it. So now I have nothing here, and I try to use Zen Med, and this is where I actually find out that Zen Med cancels after like one movement around. My warrior was actually going to tank this boss, which he would have been fine to do until I got up, but unfortunately the paladin bopped him, and then our shaman just dies because shaman definitely not as tanky as a warrior. But that's okay. So generally you are pretty safe here. If you have the defensive trinket or if you have the cheat death trinket, you can always rely on that as well. I unfortunately have been super unlucky and literally can't get the cheat death trinket to drop out of Dawn of the Infinite. But I was lucky in that I got both the Farok trinkets, so that's what I'm using right here, which is why you see me actually die there. Alright, after that, we are going to move forward, and we are going, I'm just double checking our route to make sure again, like I mentioned earlier, and we are just going to head forward into the blobs. Now, keep in mind that these blobs, they don't do very much damage up front, but remember that after they die, they will, after 4 seconds of them dying is when they'll actually like explode and do extra damage to everyone. So you are safe to pull it with the Fury if you're like in with a healer that knows and is prepared, but because of the fact that we plugged this healer, I was just trying to play it safe, and I didn't pull these together. Normally I would pull it together, especially on a non-fortified week. On a fortified week, it's a little bit more dangerous, but on Tyrannical, it's generally safe to do. Things to watch out for here is just to make sure that you're pointing the charge away, and then to make sure that you fully get out, because this entire hitbox will count as the charge and will, you know, pretty much one-shot anyone that's in there. It won't one-shot you, but you will take a lot of damage. And then remember to grab these mobs after. If a melee is closer than you and you're not trying to do anything to pick up threat, they will get one-shot. Well, not one-shot, but they'll get meleeed by all four at the same time and die. So I generally just try to like spinning crane kick as they're spawning and pick them up. And then from there you can rotate, doing things like leg sweep and ring a piece to knock them to stop them from getting their cast off. And then this next pack, generally I'll either pull these bubbles together with the next set of bubble mobs, or again pull it with the elemental, but again because of our bug healer not being in voice with us, I'm just kind of playing it safe here. But generally you are safe to pull both of these together. I do recommend if you do pull both of the sets of slimes here together that you do plan on having some type of defensive for when they all explode, because obviously it hurts. You can see one group takes you into half, so if you pull all of them at once, it will pretty much kill you. And then the other thing that kind of sucks about this pack right here, like this mob, is that on Sanguine weeks like this, the Sanguine goes under the water and you can't see it. Like the visual, I literally couldn't see it at all after it died. So you just kind of have to know where it is and try to make sure that you move the mobs out of there, even though they're all casters. So you can see I'm spinning crane kicking to pick them up, and then we communicated. My warrior used his AoE stun there. I'm going to use my AoE stun here, and then we'll use kicks or I'll ring a piece to stop the rest of these. Now, this next boss, a lot of people try to take this boss away from the eggs because you get these extra whelps, which can be dangerous to people. That is an option. I actually choose to use a different option because of the fact that I've got an enhanced shaman. He benefits from having extra mobs in here, from spreading his flame shock. So what I'll do is I'll just come in and I'll just spinning crane kick into here and then just tank the boss against the wall so that I avoid the breath here, obviously. But yeah, I can just tank him against the wall and then I don't have to worry about running. Generally, if you are standing in the hitbox, you can just regular run, auto run, and you won't actually get pushed too far away. But that's just how I choose to do it. It just kind of helps our shaman, and then he moves out right before it spawns. The rock stuff, so that we're spread. And then just got to be careful not to point breath. If it doesn't pick me, I will just stand there until breath comes, and then I'll move. But then you'll see I'll just pick up anything that went on anyone else, and then I'm just pulling back into the wall. Things to watch out for is these fish bones will also kind of like stop you, and you'll get stuck on them every once in a while. So be careful of that if you do choose to tank these in here. But you don't actually have to tank these against the wall. Again, that's just kind of what I decided to do to pad a little bit and give our enhancement shaman some more damage. Now you can see there we got really lucky that both of those earth-shaking roars landed on me. It does do AoE damage when it comes down, and we thought this was physical damage, but it turns out it's actually nature damage. So it's kind of awkward to deal with that because like we were trying to use Stone Skin Totem and we were trying to figure out why it wasn't reducing the damage. That's when we found out it was nature damage. So it is best to have your group spread when that happens. If it picks you, it's great because that means you're not going to die. But anyone who gets picked, you can see it hit the paladin there, and it almost killed them. So just be careful with that. And again, always when you go to move, be aware the breath is always going to happen right after the earth shaking war. But again, you can see I'm just repeating this process over and over again, trying to put him next to the old earth-shaking roars that, you know, has the ceiling collapse above it, even though there's no ceiling there, so I don't really understand how it's falling, but hey, it's World of Warcraft, so we won't question it too much. The thing to be careful for if you do this is if someone else runs into a whelp bag on like a different side and you aren't prepared for it, definitely just make sure you're watching to see if there's other whelps that are being pulled so that you can taunt them or hit them with a kick smash. And so I just repeat this process. Like I said, I start pretty much where he is and I just kind of work my way to this gate. If we get like bad spawning where it keeps on spawning on someone to the right, then I'll kind of go the other way, or towards the end here, like right now, when he gets to 10%, I'll just kind of pull him into the middle and deal with him normal like other people do. But again, it doesn't really matter whether you tank him in the middle or out on the side. You can see if you tank him on the sides like I do, it makes it look like you do a lot of DPS, but just definitely don't hover over the damage there because it's like 60% whelp damage and 40% boss damage. So, alright, after that we just have basically 4 more pools left and then the final boss. So this pool right here is best to do separate from the pool after it, and it's best to kill the summoner here first. So you want to have a melee kick for each imp, and you want to kick the Dreadfire Inferno. And then for the summoner, you want to kick everything he does. So we have a melee kick the first cast, and a range kick the second, which is generally the summon, and we try to kill that one first. On the next pack, it has these same mobs plus the Stalker. You do want to kill the Stalker first, and it's ideal to have in your entire group come in and stack, because the Stalker will teleport out to whoever's farthest away. So having range come in is ideal here because then you can kill it faster without having it go all over the place. With this being a bunch of caster mobs though, obviously after something dies, be ready to use Ring of Peace or some other type of knock to move these out of the Sanguine. The other cast that these imps do, that isn't the Dreadfire Inferno, don't actually hurt that much. You can see on like my frames there at the bottom, like every time it goes off, it just does a little bit of damage. They generally go on the tank only and not other people in the group. It's the Inferno that does pick other people. Now these bats are some of the most dangerous mobs in this dungeon for any other type of tank. It's not so bad for a monk though, because they put this disease bleed on you that stacks and they leech health off of you, and it also does like a fuck ton of damage. But as a monk, you can just display yourself with detox. Even still, I do still kite these away, and generally I'll just kind of slowly kite them. I'll put down Transcendence, and once they get far enough away, I'll Transcendence back and let them come back the other way, just so that I don't take a lot of damage. Just better safe than sorry. Now this last pack, just like the packs before, except for this one also has a Deadeye, which will create a copy of itself plus a bat. So again, you want to kill the Stalker here and then probably the bat, while still getting kicks on Dreadfire Inferno from the Imp and all of the Summoner's kicks. Unfortunately with this, our Deadeye, like, I don't know if he got knocked or if he disengaged or what happened, so he ends up behind me and we didn't realize it until we jumped down. So just be careful, because if you jump down as the tank here, the mobs up above, if it's not the hunter, in this case it was the hunter so it wasn't a big deal, but any of the other mobs, they won't follow you down. Even though there's a path there, they won't follow you, and if there's someone else up there, they'll turn and attack them and kind of evade bugs. So just make sure if you do jump down, jump back up to finish up these mobs, because I've seen when I was DPSing on my Havoc DH where a tank jumped down and then it just starts beating on like the healer who's still up there. So just be careful with that. Same thing, especially if you're going to knock with Ring, knock to the sides or back down the tunnel. Don't try to knock them off this cliff. Now for this final boss, the big key here is to make sure that you are saving Lust DPS pots and all of your offensive cooldowns for 50% and below, because that's where he really does all of his damage. So as a tank here, with as a monk too, we can pretty much pop our cooldowns on pool, our 1 minute cooldowns. So our brew and our exploding keg, and do that damage up front, because they will pretty much be back up about a minute, minute and a half is when you'll see the 50% phase generally happen on Tyrannical. So you're safe to pop those there. Ideally, you want to stack with whoever gets Nightmare Bolt if it is a melee, and even if it's a range, I generally pull the boss over to it, and then whoever has Paranoia will get on the other side. So you can see Cody Rage is on the opposite side of us, and he had Paranoia. And so this part of the boss is pretty uneventful. When the Feed on the Weak goes on someone as a monk, sometimes I'll try to help heal, because for some reason healers sometimes don't heal that very well. So you can see I'm healing the healer right here. We had a key before this. We did the same exact key with a different healer, and they didn't heal this at all, and we ended up ripping the key because he just didn't heal Feed the Weak at all. So just help out with healing that during the first phase, because it does do quite a bit of damage. But yeah, pretty much just kind of chill here. And once it gets 50%, this is where you're going to see he's going to do a big burst of damage, so you want to have some type of defensive. We use Rally and have people defensive, and then we're going to pop Pots, Lust, and we're going to use the rest of our cooldowns. You can see I saved my statue for this. I'm going to hit my brew again. I'm going to do my ramp for my exploding keg, and we're just going to start bursting. Now, the key here is try to make sure your other people are staying with the Nightmare Bolt people. Every time one of these swirls hits the boss, he gets a stack of Enrage, which enrages him. Now, the issue with these swirls is they're like the mushrooms before they fixed them, where the mushrooms would explode and kill anyone 2 yards past what their visual showed. These visuals are exactly the same issue. The mechanic is actually 2 yards bigger than it appears, so you definitely want to be farther away, and you want to try to get the boss to not be in them, so he's not like gaining a bunch of stacks. Because the longer this phase goes on, and the more stacks he gets, obviously you can see our shaman just got one shot by a Nightmare Bolt, so you want to try to avoid that. I've been told that you can tank him on the very edge of the room, and the ones that like spawn on the edge will be above him and not give him the buff, but I haven't experienced that myself. I tried to get that over there, but I found that it was harder. You didn't have as much room for the Nightmare Bolt and the paranoid person to not get feared, so I tried to just pull them around on the inside. But that's it for this key. If you have any questions, hit me up. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked it. If you did, please hit like and subscribe. It helps me out. But otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.